What's up, YouTube? We are back with the Troponin episodes, episode 19. Friendly reminder, if you're enjoying this content, you can get plenty more of it at teamtroponin.com. It's where we get really nerdy about the things. Training, nutrition, rehab, but otherwise you can like, subscribe, share, comment, turn on notifications. Did I hit everything today?
Subscribe, turn on notifications. Yeah, I think that's everything.
And drop us a comment, let us know if you are team guac or nut butter for added fat.
Nut butter's winning way too high of a margin right now. Too many people are dying.
No, it should be winning more. I don't know why.
It's probably because the people who favor avocado just aren't the types who have to spew their opinion all over the
Yeah,
they
don't need everyone to know. It's like they're
not the CrossFitters of the internet.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, how do you know someone? How do you know you're talking to a CrossFitter? That's the first thing they told you.
Yeah.
While on the topic of stupid things, we were talking before the podcast started about stupid things we've done to either make sure we get our training session in or to like optimize the training session.
Mm-hmm. I've got a good one here, not for optimizing it, just to make sure I always train. So this would have been 2013. There was this horrible ice storm in Kansas City where I was still living at the time. It was like January, February, and it was like everything shut down. One of those storms where, even 24-hour stores and grocery stores are closed. And at the time, not only was I never taking a day off of training, I was squatting every day. I went through about a year-long phase where I just thought I just had to. And it get into my head that I'm like a big pussy if I don't. So I had to squat every day. And even with this ice storm, I was like, how am I going to get to the gym? And I was in kind of an interesting living situation at the time, but that's yet another story that would take a long time. But basically, I'm living in a house that's maybe 3 or 4 miles away from the gym. And you can barely get down my street safely, let alone all the way there. But I was determined to make it work. And I was working as self-employed at the time. I was a freelance writer, and I had some interviews to conduct that day, like over the phone. So I packed up a backpack with all of like my laptop, my Bluetooth to do the interviews, my phone, all that stuff. And I put 2 layers on, and I set out to try to get to the gym on foot because the car couldn't get out of the driveway. And my plan was to do part of my training session, then do an interview, then do a little bit more training, then do one of the other interviews I had scheduled, and basically make like a 6 or 7 hour trip out of this, and then eat when I got home. I made it about halfway there before I realized that this was not going to happen. It's certainly not before the first interview was scheduled. So I turned around, some really nice lady saw that I was struggling to get back and picked me up and drove me the last half mile to the house I was living in. I got back just in time to take off all these now soaking clothes and sit down and do the first interview of the day. So I didn't get to train that day. I guess that's kind of a bad example because I didn't actually train in. But
I totally thought you were going to say you conducted the interview trudging through multiple feet of snow, out of breath, heavy breathing, mouth breathing. People would be like, bro, you're right.
No, I probably would have just called them and delayed or rescheduled if I had to. But thanks to this really nice lady that picked me up, I didn't have to do that.
Yeah, it's almost as good as being in a janitor's closet.
Yeah. I used to hang out. Yeah. I had a bunch of. I used to do so many dumb things when I was as far as optimizing. There was a period of time where I was obsessed with optimizing. I mean, this was early on, so I didn't know anything about nutrition. I didn't really know what worked, what made progress. And so in my mind, it was just all training, and it was all what would optimize training. And I had no idea, and I hadn't learned the science yet. And so there was a period of time where, I remember some company was selling some GH product, some effervescent GH project, and they said it would work.
GH.
Do you remember? This was the late '90s, and it was you were supposed to take it. There was 2 times you were supposed to take it. Was before workout, and then always with an empty stomach. And so I was like, well, empty stomach pre-workout. So I wouldn't eat for 4 hours before my workout just so I could take this stupid Alka-Seltzer product that didn't work, I'm sure. And I didn't have any money either, so I was probably doing half the dose, to be able to afford it. And then I would take it and wake up at 3 in the morning to take it. And this is in the dorms in college, and I had roommates, So I'd wake up, and like an idiot, I didn't think that warm water would dissolve it faster. So I would get ice water from the fridge pour it in a cup, and it would take like 45 minutes, and I would just sit there on the edge of my bed trying to stay awake while this stupid thing that didn't work would dissolve, and then of course I'd take it before training, so I wouldn't eat for like 9 hours, same thing, because I'd be completely empty stomach, and my stomach would hurt when I was training, and of course I didn't get good workouts. And then I went through a phase where I was trying to trigger the fight or flight response. And so, like, I thought, like, what could you do? And I was like, well, I can't, like, if I cut myself, I'll look, like people will see that. So I thought, like, if I burn myself, that no one, like, I could burn my inner thighs and no one would ever see it, but that would, like, really trigger the fight or flight, like, what's more painful than that? So I would, like, before a squat workout, I would take a lighter and a paper clip and I would get it all red hot. And then I'd put it on my leg, and, like, it's hard. It's really hard to brand yourself because your muscles, like, as soon as they feel that pain, they just want to jerk up. So you have to, like, really fight to keep, because it touches and your arm wants to, it's really hard to do on yourself.
Reflexes are a thing for a reason. They keep it safe.
Well, so what I would do is I would, like, hold something heavy and, like, I put it in my right arm, hold something in my left arm, and I'd get it red hot, and then hold whatever it was, like a heavy, like a chemistry book or something, and I'd slam it down, and I know that would, like, it was so stupid. And it would, burn and it would stink. And then I'd go work out and have the worst workout imaginable because it was like the fight or flight response was triggered, but it was all flight. There was no fight left in me, I tried that. I know I tried that enough that I burned I think I did it enough I realized I had like a pattern, like a line here and a line here.
Oh my God.
But my football number in college was 97. So I was like, a line here and a line here. I can do a line here, and then I have a 1 and a 7, and then I could get to the 9. But I think I gave up, and so now I got like a Roman numeral L and a 7 or whatever. There was another time when I was thinking, like, I was trying to, like, you had to be warm, but I didn't want to waste energy on warm-ups. So I thought, okay, you got to warm up, get your body warm, but every warm-up I'm doing is taking energy out of my body. So I don't want to do that. So what I would do is I thought, well, I could warm up before I go to the gym with a really hot shower and then just put layers of clothes on and go immediately to the gym, and then I'd be warm and I don't waste any energy. That doesn't work either, because if you've ever taken a really, really hot shower and then put really heavy clothes on, the last thing on earth you want to do is go do a hard workout. You want to take a nap and take all those hot clothes off. So I tried that a couple of times. It didn't work. But then I learned that, like, cold increases your metabolism, like, because your body's response to shiver and to burn. So I thought, and this is like the early on when the inner workings of how the body works is kind of, I don't really understand it all. And so this is in the winter, like my freshman year in college, and I'm reading this with probably some muscle and fitness magazine or something. And so it's like 4 degrees, winter in Michigan. And so I put, like, just in my underwear, and I'm sitting in the dorm room, and I open all the windows, and it immediately gets so cold, it's unbearable. And so I'm waiting until I start shivering, and then I'm shivering. I'm like, okay, I'm like, my metabolism's kicking up.
Yeah,
and it finally got to where I couldn't take it anymore. And I get dressed and I try to go to the gym. And the same thing, that's exhausting. That doesn't, like, I learned real quickly that burns energy. That does not give you energy. It's exhausting to shiver and then try to go to so that didn't work either. Finally, I just settled on just basically like a shit ton of ephedrine and caffeine, and I realized, well, that works best. So that's kind of what I settled on.
Yeah, that's pretty well.
Well, on the topic of
that was back
stimulants,
that was back when you could get, you get ephedrine anywhere, mini thins at a truck stop or whatever. And so I went through a period where I wouldn't work out without ephedrine and caffeine because I knew how good the workouts were. I didn't quite yet understand that, like, the cortisol released and it could be counterproductive. So I would go through great lengths. There's so many times where I would, like, delay a workout like 3 hours because I would drive around from truck stop to truck stop to find a place that actually had mini thins or just so. Oh, actually, no. I remember one time I was out, but I remember there was some kid on the football team who bought Hydroxycut, and that was back when Hydroxycut would have ephedrine. And so I knew he had it, and it was a big workout. I don't remember if it was a deadlift or a leg workout, a deadlift or squat, but, like, back then those were like make or break. I had my gold numbers, and, like, my whole life revolved around getting that number that week or whatever. And I was out. It must have been there for some reason I couldn't, like, trust that I could go drive and find some, but I knew this kid. I think it was Adam Heikela, if he's listening. I'm sure he's not, but actually I think he coaches a football team somewhere in Michigan. But so I went down to his room and, knocked. No one was there, and I knew no one was there, but the door was locked. and like you'd read, like you could pick a lock, because it wasn't deadbolt.
Yeah.
It was just, you could see the deadbolt wasn't in. It was just that. And so I'd never picked a lock before. So I thought, okay, you get a credit, like a credit card they show in the movies, So I went up, I got my identification card from college and was trying it, and it wasn't working at all or anything.
You're like trying to break into the gym with your
No, break
ID
into some
badge.
kid's dorm room so I could steal his hydroxycut to get his ephedrine.
Oh my God!
Yes,
Seriously?
much better, much worse or better.
Oh, that's right.
But so I went, that wasn't working, and I could see like, okay, that clearly doesn't work because it doesn't work obviously because it goes into the hole. How's a credit card going to go into the hole? I mean, the movies are so stupid for doing that. But a screwdriver would work if you look at it. You realize you could kind of angle a screwdriver in there. So I went around. I didn't have any screwdrivers. One kid's room, Nick Bierman and Craig Crazy Skinner. They call him Crazy because all he did was study. He wanted to be a doctor. Craig Crazy Skinner had a flathead screwdriver for whatever reason. So I went back down, and that actually finally worked. I finagled it in. You could scrape, you scrape the little thing.
Hold on. I'm confused. When you went to go ask for the screwdriver, did you tell them what you were
I don't
using it
think
for?
so.
Or did you walk around the door and be like, hey, does anyone have a screwdriver I can use? And someone just
I don't
crazy
think so.
howling?
I don't even remember, to be honest. But I don't think he asked. He probably just, oh yeah, here. But because you scrape it, and it would start sliding back, and you could see you get about there, but there's no friction because it's metal on metal. And just when I think about it, I'd get it, it would pop back down. But anyways, I finally got in there, and I remember I'm digging through his room, like hoping he doesn't come back because it looked like a psycho, And sure enough, his hydroxycut was sitting on the shelf by a window. So I went in, poured a bunch in my hand, and put it back, and went. And I had a good workout. No one ever knew that I
3 hours.
breaking and entering, so I could get a good squat workout. But it worked.
What was the story you used to go to the janitor closet before games?
Yeah. Well, football games, like college boys are just spazzes. This is like several years after the program came out. If you remember the program, there's like one scene where they're like painting their faces like skulls, and then they bash each other with shoulder pads and spit in each other's faces. So this is like what the locker room. Huh?
I'm just kidding.
No, my wife? Yeah, she's not into spitting. You'd think, but it's never been. But like guys would do that, like just really annoy, like maybe not annoy. I mean, it's how they get pumped up. I'm just not I'm not one of those guys who has to like stomp around and like bang my head on walls. So I just wanted quiet. And so looking around like the locker room, there's a locker room, there's like a dressing area and like a group shower area, and one of the kind of areas near a courtyard that came from our locker room, there's like a hallway and there was a door. And the door was unlocked. It was a janitor's closet, and it was the quintessential janitor's closet because there was nothing there but an old like desk, like an old elementary school desk.
Yeah.
With like those little chairs, and the chair was connected to the desk, and like the thing folded.
How did you fit in that?
I don't. But that, and then that awesome janitor like drain system where there was a mop and a bucket. And the drain was just part of the floor, but someone put like a row of bricks, so the water couldn't drain out. And then on the wall, there was a ripped out magazine page of a wolf howling at the moon. Like what janitor doesn't consider himself a lone wolf? It was perfect. I mean, like I would just picture like some dude who's probably not super excited about how his life turned out was flipping through some Field and Stream magazine and saw this image of a wolf. I think it was a painting too, just howling at the moon, and thought, you know what I need? I need this in my office. And so it was so that's what I would do.
On that wolf too.
So that's what I would do. I would go in there and sit in there and just kind of relax and think about the game before the game. But there's all like this pregame stuff, like the chapel comes in and says a prayer for the team, and you do all these chanting and stupid things. Well, one time I lost track of time. I almost missed the time leaving out for the game because usually I would hear like all the hustle and bustle because we did this. I don't want to give away, it's just a small college I went to, but we had this like long tradition of a chant where like one of the seniors would say something and then the whole team would repeat it. It was this whole long like step in it, and you'd build up like how loud you did it, and it really was cool. Like you'd get really fired up by the end because you're doing it in the showers and it's echoing, and by the end, like. It's so loud, and it really would motivate you. And I'd always hear that. For some reason, this time I didn't hear it. And I'm waiting, and I'm like, okay, they got to do the chant any minute. Because once I'd hear them start, you hear them moving around, I'd go out there. Never heard it. Finally, I opened the door. No one's in there. The team went out. They had already done it. Somehow I missed it. And so like I'm in a full panic. Then I grab my helmet and I go like sprinting out because I don't know, like you lose track of time because that whole time, you know, like because the game will be like 1 p.m. You eat breakfast at 7 and you got to be at the like in the locker room at 9. So you have hours. It's so I always thought it was ridiculous. So, you know, like, because guys would have all these pregame rituals, you know, get their ankles taped, you'll go to PT, you know, do their therapy. And so it would just be forever. So and this was pre-phone, so it's not like I had a phone to know the clock. It's very difficult to tell the difference between 3 hours and 3 hours and 15 minutes, you know? And so I almost missed the whole thing. I go out there and the team was already like on the field. And I went sprinting out. And luckily, like, you know, I wasn't late, missed the game or anything, but it was like a total panic. So I stopped using the janitor's closet. I didn't steal the I didn't steal the Howling Wolf poster, but I really wish I did. Now I'm thinking back, but
yeah. Sounds like you're missing that Howling Wolf poster.
oh man, I think about it all the time. Actually have a
I'm gonna send Jory a message and be like, hey Jory, Justin gave us a confession.
It's kind of been a family tradition. The wolf.
Oh, shut up, for real?
Yeah, every once in a while for like her birthday, I'll buy I'll go to Walmart and buy my wife a wolf shirt. Or yeah, so because they're so bad. You know, like who buys those? I mean, I mean, I understand the sentiment, I guess. You know, like lone wolf howling at the moon, but people, you know, like people buy shirts that are just nothing but a wolf on it, howling at the moon, or like a pack of wolves, or. But, you know.
I'm picturing the guys you usually see wearing these shirts.
Yeah, same.
They don't look too impressive.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, God bless them, but I don't know the wolf phenomenon. They're always they're the worst shirts too. They're those thick Walmart shirts that are like, they're like practically sweater thickness as a t-shirt, you know?
Yeah.
And they're so stiff, and they're always like, because it's not like a white shirt with a little wolf. It's like a whole wolf mural.
And it's like tie-dye?
Yeah, from sleeve tip to bottom. Yeah.
Justin, you need to make a crop out of these. Has anyone showed you how to crop a t-shirt for yourself?
No, like a crop top?
I'm sure your daughters can help you.
I have several crop tops, just not, yeah, I'll work on it. It's hard to get the height right, because, you know, you raise your arm up and the shirt lifts up.
Well, see, and you gotta adjust the sleeve hole. That's the other component. And the width here. I mean, there's a lot that goes into making a good crop.
Don't want to show too much under boob when your hands raise up.
Can you show too much under boob? Did I ever tell you about the worst under boob I ever saw?
This would go really well with some like Ultimate Warrior sunglasses.
Yeah. Now see, like that I understand. Ultimate Warrior shirt, old school wrestling shirts, I'm all in, but I don't get the wolves.
Hell yeah, brother. It's funny hearing you talk about the like not wanting to get super ramped up before games and things. I'm gonna actually make this nerdy for a second because now my brain's going. Thanks, Modafinil. It's funny hearing you talk about how like you're not that person that needs to be super ramped up, because I'll go and like when I'm working on someone, you can go and literally like flip the switches on your nervous system just by listening to something that is too high or too low on your optimal level of arousal. So like you can go and take someone like me who needs to find like a nice sweet spot of happy but like kind of ready to go, and have me listen to like metal, and you can watch my range of motion and muscle testing change like that after listening to it for like 20 seconds. Yeah, not even that long.
I've always wanted to do like a testing, like with one of those grip strength things, and see different levels of arousal, how long you've been aroused. Because I've just always been curious. Because I feel like I have just several things I think about. You know, like probably everyone does, but like before a set, like if I'm doing squats, I put my arms on the bar, you know, and I just kind of think for a second, and there's a thought I have, and that's all it takes. I'm ready. But you know, it seems like other people really need to build up to it, but I don't understand that, because for me, building up to it would mean like burnt out by the time, you know, several minutes in.
Yeah, I can resonate with that too. I think one other thing we should talk about, other than Team Nut Butter, Team Guac, is Team Lift Happy, Lift Angry. We talked about that a little bit before, but it's really fascinating too, just to look at how different people respond differently. Like we've trained the powerlifters who have to have that like, you know,
I can't stand that.
Me neither. I'm not.
Set. I mean, even for like a heavy set of deadlifts, like what did you pull last week?
Stiff like 645 for 6.
God, underachiever.
Not 7 plates yet.
I pulled 415 for 10, and we're not.
Yeah, I pulled a hamstring.
We're not ramping up, and we watched a lot of the powerlifters at destination and elsewhere like ramp themselves up and then miss a lift. And what can happen is if you're changing your muscle firing patterns, your start position can get so far off that you can't actually get the power production you need for generating speed off the floor, especially in something like a pull.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this, and I understand like that anger where like someone in your family was harmed or something. You could imagine that anger and how much force you could exert. But for me, I'm 100% team lift happy. That's when I'm like energized and like focused and the right amount of fired up, but not so fired up I lose my groove or like that for me. And also like I like it, like when I'm really training hard, I can't sleep the night before a deadlift session or a big squat session, so I am happy. And for me, which is like I kind of play on it now when I post videos and put stupid music on. But I like traditionally when I lift by myself, I'll put happy music on, like cheesy music even, because that's like what energizes me. Where I feel like anger drains me. What's that?
We have to drive to the gym separately because my pre-gym lifting music, I don't think it'd quite do it for Dave.
Yeah, I mean, there was scheduling reasons too. Actually, if that were the
only... like on Saturdays when we go to train legs, my pre-leg jam sesh, we have a 30-minute drive to the gym. So it's like, music's a big deal. He's got 30 minutes of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't prefer to listen to your music, but
I don't know
why. I don't like.
Fun.
I'm not like blasting. I'm not usually blasting metal on the way to the gym either. And if it is, it's not like screamy metal. But like I can listen to a podcast on the way to the gym.
Oh yeah.
And I don't really care.
But could you listen to a podcast to like get ready for a set or a session?
I prefer not. But
I can picture Dave doing that. Taking his headset off.
It wouldn't be my first choice, but it wouldn't be like distracting. Honestly, there have been a couple times when not for the main stuff, but like after like the biggest exercise of the session is done. If I was already listening to a podcast and I really wanted to finish it, I have no problem putting that back on and still making the most of every set.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, I can do that, but I can see that.
But yeah, as far as like getting really aroused, go ahead.
No, I mean, I love music, but I've never been a real music guy for training. There's really only, I really haven't. Like, I used to train with no music. There's one thing, though, Money for Nothing by Dire Straits, that intro riff, I learned for 20 rep sets, there's that whole, it's like a two bar riff, that when the guitar comes in, I don't want to do it because making guitar sounds in your mouth is it's really not.
You don't want to do that on a podcast?
No, not in front of people.
I think you told us is like you time your reps.
Yeah, because it's actually perfect. If you do 20 reps and you're doing fast reps, you can finish right as that ends, and you can kind of keep pace with yourself, and it's got like a good rhythm. But even that's kind of what's that?
You want to try that?
Yeah, try it.
It's funny you bring that up though because, like the high rep set thing, because I feel like if anything when you're training. This is like maybe a difference between bodybuilding and powerlifting training. If you're doing even like decently high reps, not even high, but like moderate, 8 plus, 10 plus, you can't go right out of the gate treating rep number 1 like it's a 1 rep max, at least not most of the time. And if you're really going high, like if you're doing a 15 to 20 repper on, say, a hack squat, like I would never want to like have screaming metal in my ears from rep 1. That's just not set you up for success.
Well, even when you were counting off some pauses for me yesterday for what was supposed to be a high rep leg press set, like the tonality and so when I count his pauses, because I know it's going to be a long set, I count them in a way that I think will encourage him to stay in for a long set, meaning he's not having to get like super ramped up. It's 1, 2, 3, through. 2, 2, 3, through. He was coming, he was 1, 2, 3, through. And I was like, I can't hang in that. Like that to me is you can't sustain that level of like being in it for a 20 rep set that way. Actually,
I shouldn't have done it that way because usually when you have a higher rep set to go, like I know that by the latter half of it, you're like trying not to basically like panic and hyperventilate. And so if anything, I'll like tone it down. Like
that's actually a really interesting topic too. Like on these high rep sets, especially for legs and something like hacks or pendulum or something like that, if you start bracing for too long, you don't have the postural control to brace under that weight for, a 20 repper, you're going to start bracing from other places and it can throw off your synthetics to a point to where like you'll finish your set and like your next breath and your next like 2 minutes are spent trying not to like make yourself hyperventilate by using really weird.
That's what I always say. Yeah, you get the most, for me, the fatigue and the oxygen debt and everything would hit because you kind of get in the
Yeah,
zone and you're like, your
absolutely.
pulse ox is dipping, but you're like, you're in that zone and you're not really noticing. But then the second the weight racks, it's like
Yep.
all that accumulation built hits at once and you realize like, oh my God, my pulse ox is like 84. I need to get air in.
Yeah,
And you,
I
you want
literally
to,
can't breathe.
yeah, you want
Yeah.
to take those shallow mouth breaths, which is terrible for reoxygenating your body. And so it's so hard to calm yourself and think you got to take nose breaths, you got to take deep breaths. Yeah, it's like
For
almost like a
me
minute
too,
panic.
those are the things that will set off some of my seizure episodes, especially if it's hot.
Oh, yeah,
So it's like, I know that for me, if I have someone around me training on like a high rep set like that, I think as an athlete, you have to know how you respond and you have to know like mentally what you need to tap into to stay in the set.
yeah,
And
that's a good.
our best friend Nick has given me that cue to just stay in it. And like from rep one, just to hear like stay in it. I was like, oh, all right, here we go.
That's
It's
what
just
a good workout partner really it is interesting. They know what you need. It's like it's such a give
yeah,
and take. If we can go back to like songs, did anyone
yeah.
watch Chris Duffin do his 1,000 for 3 set squat? This was during COVID. Remember, he was all. I feel bad for him because it was like he trained for that for like a year, and then COVID hit, and he ended up doing like a live stream of it. I happened to catch it. But he squatted to "Breathe Me" by Sia. Have you ever heard that song? It's
No, it
super
sounds great.
slow. Yeah, it's super slow. But if you listen to it, and you knew that was going to be the last heavy set you ever did after a life built on lifting heavy, that was the perfect song. It is slow and mellow, but I think he was probably crying during that set, and I would have been too if I knew that was like my last full real set to end of strength career. And if you listen to that song, that he couldn't have picked a better song to squat his last heavy squat to, even though it's a really wussy like Sia song.
But if it taps into that like almost visceral, like internal, I think ultimately for someone to perform well, that's what they have to tap into. Whether it's to what degree, like how far you're dipping into that cup is.
Oh, I
Obviously,
had to. I was tearing up for the guy. I was like, "Go, Chris, you got this."
Yeah,
You and your
actually,
lone wolf shirt.
I feel like if I do like a song for lifting, I'll listen to the same song for like every work set.
What's your song right now?
I was just gonna say, well, actually, my headphones are kind of broken, so I've been listening to nothing. But it's really random. There's if you know the band Red Fang, it's like a metal band, kind of like this. They're out of Portland. It's kind of alternative music, but there's a song called "Hank is Dead," and I don't even know what it's supposed to be about. I think maybe they wrote it about like a dog or cat that died or something. And I couldn't really tell you what it is because it's not like any of the lyrics that are particularly appealing, but it just kind of like gets me in a good mental zone to like really work hard at something that I care about.
That's funny you say that because I have two songs like that, like years through the years that would on their surface would probably never make sense. Doesn't Remind Me by Audio Slave, and then Yellow Ledbetter by Pearl Jam, and neither of them are like motivating pump up songs, but there was like certain times where that rhythm, and I would same thing. I would listen to like Doesn't Remind Me before every heavy set of a workout.
I feel like most of the Sword songs that I like are that way too. It's called The Sword. If you've never heard of them, it's I guess you'd call it stoner metal. I don't know, stoner.
Are you guys different on like upper and lower? Like, do you aim up differently for upper versus lower movements?
Probably for me, I never upper was just a workout. Like for years, it was like there was like squats and deadlifts, and that like those were the days I couldn't sleep the night before.
I feel like over all the sets that I do over the course of the week, the like 2 to 4 that I really get up for mentally are going to be probably like the top set of hacks and the top set of whatever heavy pull I'm doing. And I'm not like screaming my head off for those either, but it's a little bit more just because of like it takes a bit of a different mindset because you're just putting your whole body into it. And I rarely go into a set really worried about injury, but I know those are the ones where you're kind of like always playing with fire a little bit.
Well, especially with what you've had going on lately.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't have any real major injuries, but like a hip issue here and there, and I just hate getting hurt. And so I kind of like, I get up for it a little bit because if you put yourself into like this kind of a little bit hyped up, confident headspace, that lets me like kind of just focus on what needs to be focusing on and not like worry about shit.
Yeah,
There is
I know.
too hyped up though. Like if you
Yeah.
watch people like way too hyped up, and then in the bottom of their movement, like bottom of their eccentric, they just look unstable. That's a function of the autonomics and the sympathetics and the parasympathetics being discalibrated or uncalibrated, dysregulated, better word, and just kind of being too far on that pendulum.
I know that I used to like, my thinking was, I would always think, okay, drunks never get hurt in a car accident because they're just not, one, they're loose, but it's like they're not thinking about it, you know? And it's always like it seems like every time I knew someone got injured, it was always when they were worried about getting injured. And so what I would try to think, I think we talked about this before, and it's stupid, and I knew it wasn't true, but I would think, it was really dumb but I would think, am I ready to die? You know, like, I'm gonna do the set workout, the squat. I'm going to get this number of reps, and I would be willing to die before I stop not getting these reps. And like what I think about right now, it's like, okay, I know I'm not. There's no squat workout would be that important. But if I could get myself thinking, like really believing that, even because I would know that's not going to happen, and I would know if it actually came to that, I would stop. But if I could convince myself that, then I could like shut off the fear of getting injured. And it really doesn't make sense when I think about it now. But, what's that?
Have you ever had the fear of injury? Like, you just don't strike me as one who, while training, ever really got like scared.
Well, that's what I would think, and because it started with football, because it was I would think like before kickoff or something when you know there's going to be a big collision, you know, and I always think like it seemed like every time a kid got hurt or got knocked out or concussed, it was always like one of the kids who was always worried about that, and so I would just think, okay, I'm going to go down and I'm just going 100%. If there's going to be a collision, because back then you can lead with your head. I'm leading with my head. And I know I'm committing to it 100%. So I'm with zero worry or zero hesitation. And if I die, I die. But in that, I knew that because I'm doing that if it's going to be that big of an impact, either both of us are thinking that, and we could both get hurt, or that guy is a little bit more worried and he's going to turn or shy away or something, and he's going to be the one who gets injured. And I knew enough to know that the chance is so very, very low. But it's lowest if I commit 100%, because the injury happens from like shying away or turning or not committing 100%. So that I just realized that the chance is very, very low, and it's lowest when I absolutely don't accept it, basically, and don't give anything or shy away at all. And so I never got injured. And I don't know that probably makes no sense. It probably didn't work at all, but it worked in my head.
Well, I'm curious how, like, because in football that definitely makes sense. Like, you don't want to come into something bracing for, you know, reversal, a hit like that. But like with training, did you ever have any big injury?
No, I mean, I don't know I tore like several muscles. I need a hip replacement. But no, I never really missed a workout for any injury. No, I really lucked out. I never had an injury.
I remember, like, I think it was a couple of years now, you had like a minor, maybe a quad tear or something on the hack squat. Were you worried going into that set?
Yes. You want to know the truth? Yeah. There's twice I tore my quad when I first got back into working out after grad school, and I was so I was so mad at myself. I tore my quad and my pec within the first month, and both times I was thinking about it. I hadn't trained. You know, this is stupid looking back, but you know, I took like a long time training off, and I went back, and the first kind of leg squat work I did 225 for 10. And the next workout, I did 315 for 10. And so the next one, I was like, I'm going to get 405 for 10, you know? And so, but my knees were really hurting because like I went right back into it so heavy. And my knee was hurting all day, but I was sure I was going to get 405 for 10. And I insisted I was going to do it, but I kept thinking about the fact that my knee hurt. And I remember thinking I'm not in that mindset that I need to be in. Whether or not it would have made a difference, and I'm sure it wouldn't have, but I remember thinking I wasn't. And that was the first time I tore my right quad. And then probably 2 or 3 weeks later, I did the same thing on chest. I was doing 3 sets of 10 with 315. And I remember thinking, man, I didn't drink enough today. Because this was like right when I was finishing my thesis. And I was like, I'm dehydrated. You know, like I remember thinking there's a chance I'm going to get injured. And sure enough, I did. And then the same one a couple years ago, it was a similar thing where like I had like some tendonitis and I was wrapping my knee really tight. And I remember thinking like, man, last time I had tendonitis this bad, I tore my quad. And I don't, you know, like you're going to get injured or you didn't, but like I wasn't able to get in that thought process of I'm not going to get injured. I was thinking about it. And I don't know if that, and it very well likely did make me change my form a little bit or favor that leg a little bit and put it in a different position where I don't know if it would have made a difference
I
or
would
not.
think that, more than anything, honestly, probably what it did was just resensitize the nervous system, and resensitize / recalibrate. It's almost like the way I talk about it with clients is if you have an alarm system for your house, it should take someone throwing like a brick through your window to set that off. But the more attuned and the more aware you are of these things, it's kind of like neurogenic awareness. It takes that alarm system and makes it so that like a breeze blowing the wrong way
Yeah.
sets off. And that's something we had to work on with.
Yeah, I used to be so bad about this. If I got a little bit hurt, I would like constantly be testing the area. Like if my hip hurt, I'd be like squatting down all day, be like, is it a little bit better yet? Is it worse? I don't know. And you'd be like, you're only making it worse. You're not
picking the scab.
Yeah, you're not making the tissue worse, but based on what you're doing to your nervous system, you're going to prolong your recovery from this little boo boo because you can't just leave it alone.
That makes perfect sense.
I think the other component to that too is that I'll use myself as the flip side of that, to where I've had a lot of sessions I probably should have called it, just based on the adductor tendon, where it's scarred down. That scar tissue is not as strong as the original tendon. So if that tendon or that scar tissue is not strong and I'm loading heavier, I probably need to be a little bit more careful. But I've had a lot of days where, especially if you've had an acute injury or a traumatic injury that's like really bad, not just like a grade 1, grade 2 kind of thing. It is a mental game getting back under weight, and like trusting your body, trusting yourself, and quite frankly, like learning how to tap into that, like don't be a pansy, you're okay. And kind of knowing when to toe the line on when to push versus when to pull back. I've had a lot of sessions where things haven't been optimal, and I've been very hyper aware of what's gone on with the adductor. Maybe hydration was off, stuff like that. But being able to go and actually take what could be a reason to dampen the stimulus and actually have a great session is one of the best ways you can move the needle forward on increasing the ceiling at which you're willing to operate at. So much of our pain, our perception of pain is neurogenically driven anyway. It's not a reflection of what's going on in the tissue. So what's the best thing you can do? Coach the nervous system up.
Yeah.
And that's really what I do with allowing training to be people's rehab and just.
I like that. Yeah.
But then I also re-tear things and.
Yeah. Well, if I could go back and change one thing, I wish I would have broadened my view of what a good workout was. Because you got someone like Lee Haney, like Stimulate, Don't Annihilate, who built a career 1 billion times better than mine by basically living in a world where I would have thought was bad workouts. If I could go back, I wish I could have said, okay, my goal is this strength level at this workout or this intensity level, but if that's not there, there's this other way of getting a good workout, like this, focus, this level of focus or this type of, but if I could go back and redo things, that's what I would do.
That's been really fun for me coming from the strength background and having changed my training pretty significantly, especially for my lower body right now. Obviously, like you always want to be getting stronger and you always want to be finding a way to move the needle, but it's been really nice. Like for the first time in, God, I don't know, ever, my lower body feels more durable than my upper body. When did that happen?
And it's progressing really well too.
It hurts. So, in the good way, like the muscle tension, like the sessions are rough. Yeah. So it's just interesting, I think, coming from the strength background and knowing that like there's such a difference between top end strength expression, even for sets of like 5 to 6, which wouldn't necessarily be in the traditional like strength expression, rep range of like 1 to 3 or whatever. But how you're moving through that. We actually had a session Saturday where I was like, it looks like a good stimulating session for me, but the quality was terrible because it was all joint compression rather than muscular tension. Coming from a strength background.
Yeah, it's funny though because I feel like I don't know how you feel about your own training, but I feel like as far as bodybuilders go, I'm still by far one of the most rigid as far as like what I expect to be able to do in the gym on any given day and like how much I want to stick to a plan. But compared to how I was as a powerlifter, it's way more flexible. Like, as a powerlifter, I'd be so pissed if I couldn't hit like exactly the sets, reps, and percentage or load that I expected. And like I'll go in on Saturday for legs like yesterday, it's still the same order of exercises. Basically everything looks the same. I'm like, I don't know if a load PR is there on the hacks, so I'll move my feet down a little bit. That's more quad stimulus. It was a great set. And so yeah.
Do you miss powerlifting at all?
Personally, no, not at all. I like coaching people in it. It's still like something that can be really cool for other people, really empowering if that's how you get into weight training. But I do not miss the training for powerlifting one bit.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's I think it's kind of a little too peripheral, but one thing that I really miss about being really into training was you know, like in anything you do in life, you have good days and bad days. It was so easy to have a good day when I was really into training because all it took was having a good workout. So it was like depression was never a worry, you know. I mean, it could have been if I had like a string of bad workouts, but like it was, you know, like my life was like so, you know, that's what I loved about the sport is like there was something you could work on constantly at getting better. You know, you're eating every 2.5, 3 hours. So every 3 hours I had like this big important goal that I could improve on and you feel good about that. And then if you had a PR in a workout, it's like boom, the whole day you feel great, you know. And you don't get that with anything else. I've been trying, you know, like you can pick any other hobby and it's not, you don't get that same thing. So that's like
Yeah.
one really cool thing about training. I think that if you're not in the sport, you don't really understand. Like trying to explain that to a layperson is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's along the same lines. It's a good reason why it's important to find little wins throughout the day. It doesn't compare to hitting PRs in a workout, but I feel like you can change your mindset and how the whole day goes by just finding a few things to look at and be grateful at, even at the beginning of your day. It's like, it sounds corny, but you know, like what's that saying? Like start your day with making your bed because there's the first win for the day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And just start from there.
Yeah. I mean, every psychologist or psychiatrist in history has said those things. So.
I was talking to Amanda today. My best friend is, I think I've told you about her. She's very into the neuroscience of how our words and our thoughts change our trajectory. They change our choices, they change our interactions, they change how we carry ourselves. And one thing that her and her husband routinely do is they talk about how their actions correspond with or correlate with their values. So it'll be like if one of their values is community. Okay, what's one thing you did today that lives that value out or lives that core value out? And I was like, that's a really, really great way to lateralize the things that we look at in training. Because I mean, I'll be honest, right now, training is not my biggest win of the day. I really wish it was, but I think that's a hard thing about coaching full time and training and feeling like your hobby is your work. Mm-hmm. But finding other ways to take that value and apply it and let that like come to fruition, I think is a really great skill, and it's something that stems out of training. There's a high accountability with that. Maybe that's why it ticks the box for me. Is the accountability factor.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's funny is all those things like make sense, but they're just corny enough that like it's easy to not implement them, you know. And so many people like go through life like just not implementing those things and being miserable. Really, I mean, so many people. You talk to anybody, that's just like how they, you know, everyone, you know, like they hate their job and like. You know, and they know deep down that if it was like, well, if you just took more ownership of your job and really tried to be the best at it, or, you know, but it's like, well, you're working for someone else. You don't want to do that. I don't want to be the best for this guy, you know, but it's like the best for you also, but it's a weird psychology thing.
It's hard, I think, because those truisms are true for a reason, but I think people always want to feel like if their problem was that easy to solve, they would have found a way to do it, right? So they almost justify the laziness. By saying that like their situation is different, but it's really just laziness is what it is.
I think all of that good advice seems extra corny when you're already in a mood. So until you really decide to pull yourself out of it, it's a vicious cycle. And I mean, we all have days where like you start off in a bad mood and all these things that on a different day you'd frame as a positive or at worst neutral are suddenly negative, and it's really tough to you know make the better of it. But that's how you string a bunch of good days together, is like you make the choice to.
The other weird thing is like what builds a good life, an enjoyable life, is I think we might have talked about this, is almost always doing what you don't want to do, and which is so counterintuitive. You know, what you want to do almost always leads to a shitty future. You know, but what leads to an amazing future is doing what you don't want to do right now. So it's a really, you know, when we were like evolving, it made more sense because, you know, I don't want to go out and hunt. I might die, but I need to. And when I do the thing I don't want to do, I have food. I don't want to build shelter, but when I do, I survive. You know, it's just now we don't need all those things for survival. We know those things for happiness. And so it doesn't seem like, well, I can do anything I want. I have food. I have shelter. I could go get wasted and go on a coke bender, you know, or I could not go to college. I could quit in 9th grade and, you know, like whatever you're allowed to. But all those things you want to do, it's really a weird thing. And and I think that's why it's so easy to get into a rut, and it's so easy to do the opposite. Why you think, oh, that guy's always happy, always has success. You know, like why does everything work out for him? And it's like it's just a small little difference. He's just happened to fall into that side of things where maybe whether he understands it or not, he's reaping the benefits of doing the things he didn't want to do. Where you fell just a little bit to the other side, and it builds up over time.
Why is it that like people say that like the result, like where you are right now, is the result of the decisions you've been making for the last 3 years or something like that, 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah.
But it's 100%. It's 100% true. Something else Amanda told me today. Oh God, how she said it? She got it from James Clear that it was every decision you make is a vote for the person or the principle you want to promote or something like that. Wow, that's a great, like, just the idea of the voting, like that's a choice. Question for you, Justin, and I'd be interested to hear your take too, but like when you do have those days where you wake up and you're like, something that would generally be neutral is just a negative, how do you pull yourself out of that? Because we all have them.
I don't know. I probably just like bitch and gripe and do it, and then like do it, and like things tend to do, like how we just talked about works. Like you just once you start doing it, then things start getting better. You know, like they don't go away. You know, I mean, nothing you do. No one. 90% of our lives are doing crap we don't want to do. I don't want to wake up to an alarm clock. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to drive in traffic. I don't want to go to this job. I don't want to stay there for 8 hours. I don't want to drive back home. I don't want to do laundry. I don't want to do my bed. I don't want to pay bills. I don't want to, I don't want to do the dishes. I don't want to cook food. I don't, so like that's just your whole life. And so that's the reality. Everything we're doing is a bunch of shit we don't want to do, and so you can either like, no one wants to do it, but you can not want to do it and do it half-assed and get slowly behind and then build this life that sucks. Or you can not want to do it, but get it done and get a little bit ahead. And then like we were just talking about, like, in 5 years, it's still going to be shit I don't want to do. I mean, I don't really have a pattern. Actually, I do. I shouldn't say that. On those days, I take modafinil. I mean, that's the truth.
We were joking before we started the podcast. I just took modafinil for the first time this weekend, and I literally got this poor kid at the gym. He's asked me a couple questions about rehab, and my brain was firing so fast. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I mean, it was like I had to sit on my hands while I was talking about his leg press.
Can we to set the stage for that? So if anyone, modafinil, it's like a narcolepsy. They give it to people on that do shift work. I was actually prescribed it. Twice I've been diagnosed with narcolepsy. Oddly enough, like getting sleep studies, and I probably have it, but I never went further with it. I guess like when I go directly into REM sleep. I skip all the other stages, which is like a sign of narcolepsy. And so the first doctor was so sure I had it. Yeah, you probably do. I think it's just from having sleep apnea. But the first doctor was so sure I had it, they gave me Provigil, modafinil, and that was like, wow, eye opener. Because, because I don't like Adderall. I mean, I like Adderall. You feel great, but the way my life is, it's not good. It makes me not want to work out. It makes me want to study crap I don't need to study. It makes me not want to do my work. It really does. So. As much as there is some dopamine release and euphoria with it, it's not, I wouldn't take it because it's not worth it to me. It takes me on a path that's not conducive for what I want to do for the future. Modafinil is different because it's really just pure brain stimulation. There's not a lot of peripheral stimulation. There's some, but you don't feel euphoric. You don't want to read about the origin of the hamster genus, or dumb weird. You just get your work done, and you're a little more focused and your brain's really, it's like Cardarine for your brain, your brain endurance is really high. And so for years, I not a daily user, but it's I save it for those days where you wake up and you don't want to do things. And when it's a day where I'm there's no way I'm getting through today, well, I know if I take that, then that reverses.
And then for you, does getting stuff done, does that improve your mood? I guess that's.
Oh yeah, I think everyone it does. Yeah, I mean that feeling of and I think my wife is 100% that way. And she, I think I kind of always knew that, but before meeting her, I didn't really understand it, where, that sense of accomplishment, but now I really, really understand. Yeah, you get stuff done, you feel good. No matter how crappy your day is, if you accomplish something, it takes the edge off.
Oh, yeah.
How about you, when you have those days where it just, how do you pull yourself out of that?
I feel like my answer's pretty much the same. You just have to make yourself get going on something. And it's incredible how long you can stay mired in a bad mood before you remember that the momentum in the other direction is so easy to build.
Those are big words.
Like that's why making your bed is a good thing to do first thing of the day. Like does it matter that you make your bed? Like no, you're gonna mess it up later that night. But it's just the first win to start the day. And like that's one of the great things about bodybuilding, I think, if you can frame it this way, is that you have so many chances throughout the day for little wins. Like I got in my meals on time, I nailed everything perfectly, training went well, etc. I did my cardio even though I don't want to do it. Now I feel better for having done the cardio, etc., etc. And yeah, like I definitely have some like depressive tendencies, and there's like really bad in my family, and I know that like among all my uncles and my dad, like the ones who don't deal with it well are the ones who just sit and do nothing, and the ones who have overcome it to where you wouldn't even necessarily know it about them. Like they just decided to make something of themselves, and every day they make good choices to push themselves forward.
You want to feel really bad?
Like once, but I'm sure that'll help too.
You want to feel really bad, wake up in a bad mood, and then just sit in your room all day and see how you feel by evening. Then you're full blown depression. Yeah,
actually, that kind of reminds me of another aspect of this. Is that like we talked about how you're gonna have to do a bunch of things that you don't want to do, but none of them are really that bad most of the time. You don't love them, but you don't like it. None of them have to be horrible either. But I think some of the stuff that really makes your day worse if you let it perpetuate is the stuff that like makes you feel like physically bad. Really, like there's this, I don't know why, but there's this picture that's going around the internet right now that people keep reposting. I think maybe it's a quote attributed to Jim Carrey. I have no idea if he was the first one who said it. It's something like, "I believe depression is real, but if you don't do these things, then you're not giving yourself a fighting chance." And it's like, eat well, sleep well, exercise, get sunlight, talk to your friends, have a community, like all these basics. Like it's probably a Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing. And it's like some of those are not completely within your control. Like sometimes you have too much to do, you're not going to be able to sleep a lot. But if you can at least tick some of those boxes, that's going to set you up for success, because the physical impacts the mental and vice versa.
I don't want to like belittle depression in any way at all. I know, people who deal with depression, and I understand there's probably someone listening right now is, upset and says, you don't understand depression. I can't get out of bed. I understand that either. But it does still hold true that yes, maybe you can't, maybe you are so depressed that you can't, but that's that fighting chance, thing that if you can't, it can't get better when you aren't doing anything to make it better. And and it's not entirely in control, and it's like you can't just heal a broken arm. It's an injury. It's a different type of injury. You can't just snap yourself out of it at all. But what you can do is start working on building momentum. And even when you feel like you can't, and I don't want to speak like I know anything about it for the people who are truly depressed, but you have to understand that if you are in that state, you're not going to get out of it by just laying in bed, not saying you can't get out of it. Even if you can't, that's just, like, it's like that, like, give yourself a fighting chance thing. It is true.
My dad does a lot of business coaching, and so much of what he looks at is communication styles and kind of looks at the people rather than business. And one quote that he uses often that has really stuck with me is that inertia requires intent. And I give that to a lot of my clients who kind of feel like their life is getting away from them, or they feel like they just have situations outside of their control with this, that, and the other. And those things are very real. I mean, there's very little that we have control over, and yet at the same time, there's a lot that we have control over. And I think that even just you're not going to make any change or get any inertia or momentum if there's no intent to do so. And I don't know, I really, really feel for the people who have a hard time bridging the gap between wanting to have the intent and having the intent, because that's a hard place to be.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to want to. You're never going to want it. I mean, I don't know, can you want to have the intent? You just, like, at that state, you just have to have it. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speak about something I'm not an expert on, but.
I don't know. I mean, I think that there are a lot of things that I can, like, I'll use myself right now. I want to train a lot right now. I really want to love training right now, but I don't.
I got you.
I do it because of the habit, and I do it because I have to, and it sadly reduced frequency right now. But if you don't keep some sort of inertia going, it's so easy to just.
And the inertia is everything. like, if you, I understand because I'm out of shape now. I understand like the people who are like when you're fat and out of shape, and it's so much easier to just keep going the direction you're going. Because when you're in shape, like when I was full on bodybuilding, it was hard to not do that because for one, it was so much a part of my life, and for two, I didn't want to ruin it. You know, like you put all this work in, I don't want to ruin it now. I don't want to eat off plan. I don't want to miss a workout. I've done all this work to get here. I don't. Where the opposite holds true on the other end. It's like it's so far away, and you know, like it's so hard to get moving in that direction. So I totally understand, and I think it holds for everything. That's why perma-bulkers stay perma-bulkers. That's why the 140-pound rip guys never get big. That you know, it's like it's it's so much easier to do what we've always done.
Even within and with outside bodybuilding, right? Like Justin, one of the things that we've talked about a lot with you over the last couple of years has been the fact that what you've taught us about ourselves with bodybuilding carried over into other avenues, the amount of effort that goes into things, right? And I think people always want to do well with things. People want to say they can run a business. People want to say they're willing to do, the grind. People want to say that they, have the desire to do X, Y, and Z, but there's ultimately something holding them back. And very often it's that initial step in that inertia.
Well, yeah, I think people look at it ass backwards. Like, you might get some motivation here and there, but typically motivation is the byproduct. It's not the initiator. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think my, my career in software is a good example right now. I mean, it's, it's how we pay most of our bills. So it's, at least on my end, and it's not always fun, but like right now, I'm fortunate to be in a good spot where I'm in a new gig, and it's pretty engaging. If I describe any of the work to a layperson, they're like, that sounds boring as shit. But and it kind of is. But then once you get going, it's like you get sucked into this challenge, and I can't stop thinking about it. And it builds momentum, and it took like just a few initial steps, and I think the momentum is actually almost always easier to build than you anticipate that it will be. And the longer you put it off, the more you build it up in your head. Is like, it's going to be so hard to get to this end goal. But then once you get started, maybe it's rocky at the beginning, but it builds quickly. And after, I don't know, a day or week, depending on what you're really working on, you kind of wonder what took you so long to get started, especially if it's something that you're even mildly interested in. You take those first couple steps, and
it's almost harder to stop as to keep going.
Writing code is the best example of that ever, because like you got this big daunting thing, you don't know where to start, you don't want to start, and it starts so slow, and it takes so long because it's not like it's not like reading a book or reading a page from a book. You got like so much concentration. Where am I at with this? But then once you get into it, it's like you can't stop. You could sit there for hours working on refining this line, refining. At least that was my experience. And where like you never want to get started, but once you get into it, like
it's to the point where, if I look at like all the things that I need to get done, I've got my job at Amazon, I've got Team Troponin stuff, and then I've got the school project that I'm working on to finally finish this computer science degree. And so there's all this work, but if I try to just say, well, I'm going to chunk out this portion of the day for one and this portion of the day for another, well, working on a technical problem doesn't really work that way. Like, you get knee deep into it. You can't just stop and say, I'll come back to it in 2 days when I have it chunked out. It's like, no, this needs to happen now.
Yeah, because you might have 2 hours of work just to get back to baseline.
Yeah, exactly. And we're back. Yeah, we are. Yeah. Sorry, guys, this recording cut out. But yeah, like I was saying, if I have like 90, 100 hours of total technical stuff to get done over, say, the course of a week, I'll just kind of block it off how I see fit, because that's the luxury of working from home. As long as you get your stuff done, nobody really knows what order you did it in. So I might work on one problem for my main job for 2 days in a row, and then not do that job for the next day, so I can focus on something else. But it all ends up working out. But we're almost at the hour mark. Anyway, did you guys have anything more to add to that?
No, I'm good. I thought it was good. That was a good talk. That was more freestyle than usual. I liked it.
Yeah, we had more bodybuilding nerd stuff we were going to talk about, but we can cover that the next time. So,
per usual, guys, if you have any questions, any topics you'd like us to cover, if you want to hear Justin perform a guitar solo, drop any requests in the comments below, and we'll be sure to get to them when we can.
Thanks, guys.
For more content like this, visit www.teamtroponin.com.
This video is brought to you by First Attachment Nutrition, battle-tested nutrition, expert formulated supplements. Join the First Attachment revolution.